The fluorescent lights of the Charleston Clinic buzzed faintly above me as I sat in the waiting room, thumbing through a dog-eared magazine. My phone vibrated, shattering the monotony. It was my only daughter, Sophie. Her voice cut through the line, sharp and distant, like a winter wind off the Atlantic. "Mom, we're leaving for Europe tomorrow. I sold your Sullivan's Island beach house and Dad's old truck. We needed the cash. Talk soon." Blick. The call ended before I could respond. 45 years of pouring my heart into raising her, of sacrifices stitched into every seam of our life, and she'd tossed me aside like a forgotten keepsake. But as I sat there, clutching the phone, a quiet smile crept across my face. Sophie didn't know something crucial. My name is Eleanor Hart, 71 years young, a widow for 6 months. Until that moment, I thought I knew my daughter. I was wrong. My husband, James, had left this world suddenly, felled by a heart attack at our breakfast table in our Charleston home. It was a ritual we'd cherished for 45 years. Him pouring my coffee, adding just the right splash of cream, and setting down a plate of buttered toast. That morning, he'd brushed a kiss across my forehead, his voice warm as he said, "Morning, my darling." Those were the last words he spoke. Since then, Sophie had seemed more attentive, visiting our West Ashley home 3 times a week, or so I thought. She'd helped plan James's funeral, driven me to the market, even nudged me to see a doctor for a checkup. "Mom, you've got to look after yourself now that you're on your own," she'd say, her smile so tender I mistook it for love. Now I saw it for what it was, calculation. That Sullivan's Island beach house was our haven, bought when Sophie was 15, built on years of scrimping and dreaming. Summers there were magic. Barbecues by the ocean, birthday cakes under the stars, Christmases with the scent of pine and salt water. Sophie brought her high school sweethearts, then later her husband, Nathan. I'd cook shrimp and grits, scrub the floors, wash linens. Our family's heartbeat lived in that house. I never imagined she'd see it as a paycheck. And that truck, James's pride, a weathered Ford he polished every Sunday after church, parked under the live oak in our yard. Sophie knew it was more than metal to me. It held James's scent, his quiet devotion. She sold it like it was nothing. Sitting on that hard plastic chair in the clinic, surrounded by coughing strangers, I didn't cry. For the first time since James's death, a strange calm settled over me, like the hush before a low-country storm. A memory flickered, something I'd buried in grief. 3 days before James passed, he'd handed me a thick manila envelope. "Eleanor, keep this in your nightstand," he'd said, his eyes serious. "If anything happens to me, open it when you're ready. Not before." I'd tucked it away without a second thought, lost in the chaos of his funeral and my heartbreak. I'd forgotten it entirely until now. The nurse called my name, pulling me from my thoughts. The doctor, a kind man with a Charleston drawl, checked my vitals and declared me fit for my age. "More rest, better meals, Mrs. Hart," he advised. I nodded, but my mind was on that envelope, waiting in our West Ashley home. As I left the clinic, I thought of Sophie's cold words and suspected Nathan's hand behind them. He'd always treated me like a burden. His smiles thin as Spanish moss. Sophie said I no longer had a truck, so I walked to the bus stop on Savannah Highway. But as I waited, a spark of defiance lit within me. Sophie thought she'd stripped me bare, but she didn't know James. My husband was a planner, always 10 steps ahead. The bus rumbled up, and I took a window seat, watching Charleston's pastel houses and palmetto trees blur by. The city pulsed with life. Tourists on King Street, locals hurrying to work, each carrying their own burdens and secrets. I had a secret too, one I was about to uncover. At home, I went straight to my bedroom, the one James and I had shared for decades. My hands shook as I opened the nightstand drawer. There it was, the manila envelope, my name scrawled in James's precise handwriting. I could feel the weight of papers inside, heavy with promise. I sank onto our old 4-poster bed, the room dimming as dusk crept over Charleston. Shadows danced across the walls, familiar as old friends. I opened the envelope with care, like unwrapping a long-lost gift. What I found inside stole my breath. Inside were deeds, bank statements, stock certificates, and a letter in James's hand. Tears blurred my vision as I read. "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I kept this from you, but I wanted to shield you from worry. Our savings weren't just for the beach house. I invested in properties and businesses over the years. You're wealthy, my love, not just in spirit, but in ways you never imagined." My hands trembled as I sifted through the documents. There were titles to 6 properties. Charming bungalows in Mount Pleasant and south of Broad, a sleek condo on East Bay Street, a quaint motel on Folly Beach, and the 20-story apartment building in downtown Charleston where Sophie and Nathan lived. James had owned it all through a company I'd never heard of, and I was its sole heir. Bank statements revealed accounts with sums that seemed like typos. Millions quietly amassed. James drove a bus for 40 years, but he'd been a financial wizard in secret, turning every penny we saved into a fortune. His letter explained why he hid it. "I didn't want money to change us or Sophie. I wanted her to love us for us, not our wealth." The irony stung. Sophie thought she'd left me penniless, but I held an empire. Sleep eluded me that night. I wandered our home, fingers trailing over the oak dining table. The faded curtains Sophie mocked as old-fashioned. Family photos lined the walls. Sophie at 5, giggling on James's knee. When had that joyful girl turned so ruthless? Dawn, my phone rang. It was Sophie, her voice softer, almost rehearsed. "Mom, you okay? We sent you some money from the house and truck. It's not much, but it'll tide you over while you find a smaller place." "My share." I kept my tone steady, masking the fire inside. "Yeah, Mom, 30%. Fair, right? We need the rest for Nathan's business deal in Europe. It's a big opportunity. 30% of what was mine. How generous. When do you leave?" "Yes. This afternoon," she said. "We'll be gone 6 months, maybe more if the deal pans out. Don't worry, we'll help you find a little apartment when we're back. Something suitable." Suitable. As if she knew what I needed. "Safe travels, Sophie," I said. "Oh, Mom, I knew you'd get it. You're always so understanding. Love you." She hung up, her words hollow. I stood there, phone in hand, and laughed. A deep, cathartic laugh I hadn't felt since James's death. The absurdity was almost funny. My daughter had stolen from me, dismissed me, all for a doomed European scheme. But it wasn't the money that cut deepest. It was how easily she'd erased me after 45 years of love. I checked my bank account. They'd deposited a pitiful sum, a fraction of the beach house's value, rushed to cash out. That afternoon, I watched from my window as Sophie and Nathan piled suitcases into a cab. Nathan lugged 2 oversized bags. Sophie clutched a designer carry-on. They laughed, kissed, planned their adventure, never glancing at my house. No goodbye. In the kitchen, I spread James's documents across the table, sipping sweet tea. I could call a lawyer, reclaim everything, but a sharper idea took root, one that would teach Sophie a lesson she'd never forget. I dialed Mr. Caldwell, the attorney who'd handled James's affairs. He'd offered help at the funeral, and now I needed it. "Mrs. Hart, good to hear from you. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing, Mr. Caldwell. I found some papers from James the first don't understand. Can we meet?" "Tomorrow morning, my office," he said. That night, I slept deeply, dreaming of James in his favorite armchair, reading the Post and Courier. He looked up, grinned, and said, "About time you took charge, darling." I woke with a fire in my chest. Not joy, not sorrow, but purpose. For the first time since James left, I had a mission. I'd reclaim what was mine, but not the way Sophie expected. The next morning I dressed with care, slipping into my burgundy dress. James always said it made me look regal. I pinned my hair, dabbed on lipstick, and saw a woman in the mirror I hadn't seen in months. Strong, resolute. Mr. Caldwell's office in downtown Charleston was in a historic building, its oak floors gleaming under sunlight streaming through tall windows. He greeted me warmly, but his jaw dropped when he saw the documents. "Mrs. Hart, this is..." Extraordinary. James was a genius. You own. I know, I cut in. I've read them. I need to know my legal options. He confirmed the papers were ironclad. I owned everything, and Sophie's sale of the beach house was fraudulent. We can recover the house immediately and pursue fraud charges against Sophie, he said. No charges, I replied. I want this handled quietly. Can you nullify the sale and secure my properties, especially the apartment building where Sophie lives? He raised an eyebrow but nodded. It'll take a few weeks, but it's doable. Anything else? Keep it secret, I said. No one can know I'm behind this. Leaving his office, I felt awake, alive, as if I'd shed a heavy fog. Charleston's cobblestone streets bustled around me, but my world had shifted. I had a plan. For weeks, I played the part of the grieving, abandoned widow. By day, I was Eleanor Hart, pitted by neighbors. By night, I was a strategist, working with Mr. Caldwell to reclaim my assets in secret. I stayed in my West Ashley home, though Sophie probably pictured me in a cramped rental. Each morning, I ate breakfast at the table where James and I had shared countless meals, then walked our neighborhood, nodding to neighbors' sympathetic glances. One afternoon, Clara, my neighbor since forever, caught me watering my azaleas. Eleanor, is it true Sophie up and left for Europe, leaving you high and dry? Yes, I said, clipping a leaf. She and Nathan have big plans. How'll you manage, honey? Everyone knows James didn't leave much. If you only knew. Eleanor, darlin'. Do you need anything? I can swing by with some of my pecan pie or help with your groceries, Clara said, her eyes soft with concern as I watered my azaleas. You're too kind, Clara, but I'm managing just fine, I replied, offering a small smile. She gave me that familiar look, pity laced with a touch of relief that this wasn't her burden to bear, the same look I'd seen at James's funeral 6 months ago. Well, you know where I am if you need me, sugar, she said before heading back across the street. These exchanges were a daily ritual in our West Ashley neighborhood. The butcher at the market, the baker on Savannah Highway, the lady at the corner store. They all spoke to me in that hushed, sympathetic tone reserved for the down and out. I'd nod, smile, and thank them, but secretly, I relished the charade. It was like living 2 lives at once. By day, I was Eleanor Hart, the poor widow abandoned by her daughter. By night, I was a strategist, orchestrating a comeback Sophie couldn't imagine. One Wednesday morning, Mr. Caldwell called. His Charleston drawl steady over the line. Mrs. Hart, good news. We've undone the sale of your Sullivan's Island beach house. The buyers didn't know it was fraudulent, so they got their money back without a fuss. The house is yours again. Wonderful, Mr. Caldwell, I said, my heart lifting. What about the apartment building where Sophie lives? That's trickier, he replied. You've always owned it through James's company, but we need a few administrative tweaks to give you full control. Should take about 2 weeks. Perfect. Keep me posted. I hung up, cradling my coffee in the kitchen, my thoughts drifting to Sophie. 3 weeks in Europe, and not a single call, text, or even a postcard from Paris. To her, I'd vanished the moment she pocketed the money from my beach house and James's truck. But that was about to change. I decided to visit the Sullivan's Island house. I took the bus along the same coastal route James and I had traveled countless times, the salty breeze through the window stirring memories. The house stood as I remembered it, small, cream-colored, with a porch facing the Atlantic. The new owners had added potted geraniums to the steps, but otherwise it was untouched, a time capsule of our family's past. I sat on the curb across the street, staring for an hour. I could see Sophie as a little girl, her laughter echoing as she built sandcastles on the beach. James at the grill, the smoky scent of shrimp mingling with my low-country potato salad from the kitchen. Sophie bringing friends, then boyfriends, then Nathan. Those joyful summers, now reduced to a quick cash grab by my daughter. An elderly man emerged from the house, spotting me. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked, his voice kind but curious. "Yes, thank you," I said softly. "Just reminiscing." I knew the folks who owned this place. Such a shame, he said, shaking his head. We were told the old lady was sick, needed to sell fast. Thought we got a deal, but turns out the sale wasn't legal. Had to give it back. Did you know them? Asked. Not personally, he said. Dealt through intermediaries. They said the daughter handled it all, 'cause the mother couldn't. Sad business. If you only knew how sad, I thought. I'm glad you got your money back, I said. We did, thankfully. Love this house, though. Gotta find another now. My heart ached as I walked away. Not for the money, but for how easily Sophie had spun a lie about my health to justify her betrayal. To her, I wasn't a mother with feelings, but a hurdle to clear. That night, I called Mr. Caldwell. I want James's truck back too, I said firmly. That's tougher, Mrs. Hart, he replied. The truck was in your name, but Sophie had a power of attorney to sell it. How? Asked, a chill running through me. You signed one a few months ago after James passed. Don't you recall? The memory hit like a wave. Sophie had brought papers to our West Ashley home, saying they were for funeral and estate matters. Grief had clouded my mind, and I'd signed without reading. How foolish I'd been. I see, I said, my voice steady despite the sting. Can we get it back? We can try, Mr. Caldwell said. We'd need to prove deception or coercion, which won't be easy. Do it, I said. I want everything they took. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a peculiar rhythm. Mornings I played the pitiful widow, chatting with neighbors, buying groceries at the Piggly Wiggly, keeping up appearances. Afternoons I transformed into a businesswoman, poring over James's documents, strategizing with Mr. Caldwell, learning the intricacies of finance I'd never needed before. James's investments were masterful. The downtown Charleston apartment building where Sophie lived wasn't just a cash cow from rent. It sat in a booming market, its value soaring. I also learned Nathan, Sophie's husband, was drowning in debt. He'd taken loans using their apartment as collateral, unaware he didn't own it. When the banks caught on, he'd be in deep water. One Friday, Mr. Caldwell called with a breakthrough. Mrs. Hart, it's done. You have full control of all your properties. And we got the truck back. Turns out the buyer's a friend of mine. He returned it for a small fee after I explained the situation. Brilliant work, Mr. Caldwell, I said, a smile spreading. One more thing. I want you to send Sophie a letter. What kind? He asked. An eviction notice. Silence hung on the line. Mrs. Hart, are you certain? She's your daughter. I'm certain, I said, my voice like steel. She decided I didn't matter. Now she'll see how much I do. Send it to Europe? He asked. No, I replied. Wait until she's back. I have a feeling that'll be soon. I was right. That afternoon, Clara rushed over, her eyes wide with gossip. Eleanor, have you heard? Nathan's in hot water with the bank. My cousin at First Coastal says they're digging into loans he took out, using that fancy downtown apartment as collateral. Turns out it's not his. Really? I said, feigning surprise. Yes, ma'am. And Sophie didn't know a thing. Word is she's gotta come back from Europe to sort it out. What a mess, I said, hiding my satisfaction. Worse than that, Clara went on. Nathan lied about that big European business deal. There was no deal, just him dodging his debts here. Everything was falling into place. Sophie had bet everything on Nathan, sacrificing our bond, only to learn he was a fraud. That night, I sat on my porch, sweet tea in hand, gazing at the Charleston stars. James used to say they were the souls of those who'd lived well, watching over their kin. If he was right, he was up there, smiling as his plan unfolded. Thank you, my love, I whispered to the sky. You're still looking out for me. The next morning, Mr. Caldwell called early. Mrs. Hart, Sophie's back. She landed at Charleston International alone. Rumor is Nathan stayed in Europe after a big fight. I see, I said, my pulse quickening. Did you send the letter? Going out today. She'll get it tomorrow. I hung up, standing in my kitchen, a mix of nerves and anticipation swirling. After weeks of quiet maneuvering, the first move was here. Sophie was about to learn her mother wasn't the helpless widow she'd imagined. She arrived at her downtown Charleston apartment Tuesday night. Clara, ever the neighborhood informant, stopped by the next day. Eleanor, Sophie's back, saw her dragging one suitcase, looking like she cried the whole flight from Paris. And get this, she didn't have her keys. Had to get the superintendent to let her in. Interesting, I said, picturing Nathan keeping the keys, likely staying in Europe. Sophie was alone, and soon she'd face my welcome home surprise. That afternoon, Mr. Caldwell confirmed. The letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman handed it to Sophie herself. Perfect, I said. How long does she have? 30 days to vacate per South Carolina law. But Mrs. Hart, are you sure? She's your kin. Mr. Caldwell, I said, my voice firm. My kin sold my home and truck in a 2-minute call. She treated me like trash. Now she'll learn actions have consequences. I understand, he said. I've thought it through, every angle. That night sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake, imagining Sophie opening the eviction notice. Her confusion turning to shock, then panic. She'd likely think it was a scam, but a call would confirm it was real. At 8 a.m. my phone rang. Sophie's voice was frantic. Mom, I need to talk to you now. Morning, honey, I said calmly. How was Europe? Mom, no time for that. I got a weird letter saying I have to leave my apartment in 30 days. It's a mistake, right? Do you know anything? An eviction notice. How odd, I said, feigning ignorance. Who's it from? Some company. Hold on, James Investments Incorporated. James's name on the company was a poetic touch. Never heard of it, honey. Is it legit? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Mom, please help. I don't know what to do. Nathan left me in Paris with another woman, and now this. I'm lost. There it was. Nathan had abandoned her, likely when the money dried up or his debts caught up. Poor Sophie, burned by the man she'd chosen over me. I'm so sorry, honey. Where are you? In the apartment, but not for long. Mom, can I come over? I need to talk to someone. I've got no one else. The irony was delicious. After discarding me for Nathan, she now needed her mother. Of course, honey. Come anytime. I hung up, catching my reflection in the mirror. Time for the performance of a lifetime. I chose my plainest gray dress, tied my hair in a neat bun, and practiced a look of weary concern, the perfect image of a broken widow. Sophie would see exactly what she expected. An hour later she knocked. When I opened the door, my breath caught. She was gaunt, dark circles framing red-rimmed eyes, her designer clothes wrinkled and faded. Mom, she said, voice cracking. She stepped forward as if to hug me, then froze, as if remembering the rift she'd carved between us. Come in, honey, I said softly. Coffee. Please, she whispered, her voice heavy with defeat. We sat at the worn oak table in my West Ashley kitchen, the same spot where I'd pored over James's documents weeks ago. Sophie looked small in her old chair, fragile, like the little girl who'd once confessed her schoolyard woes to me. Mom, I'm so sorry for how I left you, she said, her voice trembling. I treated you awfully. It's behind us, honey, I said softly. No, it's not, she insisted, her voice cracking. I said terrible things and now I'm alone. What happened with Nathan? I asked, leaning forward. He ran off with a 25-year-old barista in Paris, she said, tears welling. There was no business deal in Europe. It was all a lie. He used the money from your Sullivan's Island beach house and Dad's truck to fund his escape from debts here. Debts? Prompted. So many, Mom, she said, her face crumpling. He'd been taking out loans for years, using our downtown Charleston apartment as collateral. But now I've learned he didn't even own it. Here was my opening. I don't know, honey, I said, feigning confusion. Property matters are complicated. That's not all, Sophie continued. The banks say I'm liable for his debts because we're married. And then there's this eviction notice. Mom, I'm lost. I've got no money, no job, nowhere to live. Her sobs broke free, raw and desperate. For a moment, my mother's heart ached to hold her, to promise everything would be fine. But then I remembered her cold voice from the clinic, the ease with which she'd dismissed me, treating me like a burden. Have you talked to a lawyer about the notice? Yes. I can't afford one, she said, wiping her eyes. We burned through everything in Europe. Nathan took what was left when he ran off with her. So, what's your plan? Asked, keeping my tone neutral. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I was hoping, maybe I could stay here for a bit. Just until I find a job and a small place to rent. There it was, the question I'd anticipated. After selling my home and truck, after casting me aside, she now wanted me to save her from her own mess. She expected the poor widow she'd created to be her lifeline. Of course, honey, I said warmly. This is your home. Sophie's eyes widened, as if she hadn't expected my kindness. Really, Mom? After everything? You're my daughter, Sophie, I said. That's forever. She rose and hugged me, a desperate, clinging embrace, like someone grasping at driftwood in a storm. I hugged her back, but my warmth was measured, strategic. Thank you, Mom, she said, pulling away. I'll find a job soon, I swear. I won't be a burden. Don't fret now, I said. Rest, heal, and we'll figure out what's next. Sophie left to gather things from her apartment. I stayed in the kitchen, marveling at how perfectly she'd played into my hands. She'd come to me broken, desperate, suspecting nothing. To her, I was still the pitiful mother she'd abandoned. But this was just the opening act of my plan. Having her under my roof would set the stage for what came next. I'd let her settle, feel safe, think she'd found a haven. Then, when she least expected it, I'd show her the difference between choosing hardship and facing its consequences. That night, I called Mr. Caldwell. I need another favor, I said. Tell me, Mrs. Hart, he replied, his Charleston drawl calm. I want you to dig into Nathan's debts. How much, to whom, and how we can untangle them from Sophie. That'll take time, but it's doable, he said. And Mr. Caldwell, keep it completely confidential. No one can know I'm behind this. Of course, he said. May I ask your endgame? It's simple, I said. I'm going to save my daughter, but first she needs to know what rock bottom feels like. I hung up and poured a glass of the Pinot James had saved for special occasions. It had been ages since I'd had a moment worth celebrating like this. The game was on, and for the first time in months, I held all the cards. Sophie moved in the next day, arriving with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. Her life reduced to scraps. I watched her unpack in her old bedroom, the same one where she'd dreamed as a teenager. Every move carried the weight of her humiliation, from a luxury downtown condo to her childhood room. Mom, I found this in the apartment, she said, holding up a manila envelope. It was in Nathan's things. It's got your name on it. My pulse quickened, but I kept my face calm. It was another of James's envelopes, smaller and newer than the one in my nightstand. My name, I said, feigning surprise. Look, she said, showing me James's handwriting. Maybe Nathan found it when Dad passed and forgot to give it to you, Sophie said. Could be, I replied, taking the envelope. I opened it in front of her. Inside was a brief letter and a small key. The letter read, Eleanor, if you're reading this after finding my first envelope, Sophie's likely in trouble. This key opens safety deposit box 247 at First Coastal Bank in downtown Charleston. It holds something to help her, but use it wisely. Forever yours, James. Sophie read over my shoulder, her eyes wide. A safety deposit box. Dad had one. I had no idea, I lied smoothly. He never mentioned it. Should we check it out? She asked, hope flickering. I don't know, honey, I said, pausing for effect. Maybe we should leave it be. But, Mom, there could be something important. Documents, maybe something valuable to help us. Her voice was thick with desperation, grasping for any lifeline. I let her stew, then said, "All right, we'll go tomorrow." That night we ate dinner together for the first time in months. Sophie cooked shrimp and grits, her attempt at atonement, but the meal tasted of guilt and regret. She spilled details of Europe, Nathan's lies, his mounting debts, his betrayal. "He lied about everything, Mom," she said, her fork trembling. "Not just the business but the loans. He owes over $100,000, and he used my name for some without telling me." "How?" I asked, masking my satisfaction. "He forged my signature," she said. "When we married, I gave him access to our joint account. I never thought he'd do this." "Can you prove you didn't know?" I asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "The banks say I'm liable because we're married. And the divorce. I don't even know where Nathan is. His phone's off, no emails, nothing. He's gone." Perfect. Nathan had fled like the coward he was, leaving Sophie to face the wreckage alone, just as she'd left me. "I'm so sorry, honey," I said, my voice soft. "I didn't realize it was this bad." "I thought he loved me," she said, tears falling. "I thought we were building a future, but I was just a means to an end." "Love can blind us," I said, resisting the urge to say I'd warned her about Nathan's shifty eyes. "Don't beat yourself up." "But I didn't just ruin my life, Mom," she said, her voice breaking. "I ruined yours. I took your beach house, your truck, all for a man who ditched me. Now we're both stuck, scraping by because of me. If you only knew," I thought, knowing I could solve her problems with a single call. But not yet. "It's in the past, Sophie," I said. "We'll manage." "No, we won't," she insisted. "You lost everything Dad left, and I lost my marriage, my future. We're two broke women trying to survive." The irony was almost poetic. She had no idea I owned the apartment building, the beach house, and millions more. The next day we went to First Coastal Bank in downtown Charleston. Sophie was jittery, clinging to hope. I played the bewildered widow, unfamiliar with finance. The bank clerk led us to the safety deposit boxes, checked my ID, and opened box 247. Inside gleamed a treasure: rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. I recognized some as James's family heirlooms, others new to me. A letter detailed each piece's origin and value. Sophie gasped. "Mom, this is worth a fortune." "You think so?" I said, feigning uncertainty. "Look at this emerald, this pearl necklace," she said, eyes shining. "Dad left a treasure." James's letter valued the jewels at $200,000, a drop in the bucket compared to my other assets, but significant to Sophie. "What do we do with them, Mom?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "They're family keepsakes." "But we could sell some," she pressed. "You could buy back the beach house, and I could pay off Nathan's debts." There it was, her instinct to use James's legacy to fix Nathan's mess. She hadn't learned a thing. "Are you sure you want to sell your father's heirlooms for Nathan's debts?" I asked. "What choice do I have?" she said. "If I don't pay, the banks will take everything. I don't own anything. It was all in Nathan's name." "Think carefully, Sophie," I warned. "Once these are gone, they're gone." "I know," she said, "but I can't get a job with these legal issues hanging over me. No one will hire someone with this much debt." We brought the jewels home. Sophie spread them across the kitchen table, inspecting each piece, calculating what to sell. It broke my heart to see her reduce family history to dollars and cents. "I think I can get $180,000, she said one afternoon, tallying figures. "It's less than I hoped, but it'll cover the urgent debts." "Are you sure?" I asked. "If I don't pay soon, they'll take everything," she said. "They could even come after this house if they tie me to any properties." The irony was delicious. She feared losing a house I owned, using my husband's jewels to pay a conman's debts, all while I held a fortune she couldn't imagine. "How will you decide which debts to tackle first?" I asked Sophie as we sat at the kitchen table in my West Ashley home. "I met with a free financial counselor at First Coastal Bank," she said, her voice steadier than before. "She said to focus on debts tied to collateral, Those could trigger foreclosures or property seizures. In just weeks, Sophie had changed. The woman who'd sold my Sullivan's Island beach house without a word was now meticulously weighing every financial choice. Her hardships had forged responsibility, but they'd also left her brittle, like a palmetto frond after a storm. That evening, as she sorted debt notices on the table, my phone rang. It was Mr. Caldwell. "Mrs. Hart, I've got a full report on Nathan's debts," he said, his Charleston drawl grave. "It's worse than we thought." "How bad?" I asked, gripping the phone. "Over $200,000 to banks and private lenders. Worse, he forged Sophie's signature on some loan documents, making her legally liable." "Can we clear her?" I asked. "If we prove she was unaware, we might free her from some debts, but it'll be a long, costly fight." "How costly for a top lawyer?" "About $50,000 with no guaranteed win." "I see. And if she pays the debts?" "That'd be quickest, but I doubt she has that kind of money." "Mr. Caldwell, prepare the documents to clear Sophie's name, but don't tell her yet." "You're paying Mrs. Hart?" he asked. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my daughter," I said, "but it has to be done my way." I hung up and found Sophie in the living room, staring at the jewels from James's safety deposit box. Her eyes were heavy, like a child who'd broken a cherished heirloom and didn't know how to mend it. "What's on your mind, honey?" I asked. "Dad," she said softly. "How disappointed he'd be if he saw what I've done with my life." "Your father loved you dearly, Sophie," I said. "He'd understand." "No, Mom," she countered, her voice breaking. "He taught me to cherish family, to be responsible, not selfish. I did the opposite. Abandoned you for a liar, sold our memories for cash. I wrecked everything he built." For the first time since her return, I heard true remorse. Not just regret for the fallout, but a deep reckoning with her moral failures. "We all make mistakes, honey," I said. "What matters is learning from them." "But how do I fix this, Mom?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "How do I undo the damage?" There it was, the question I'd waited for. Sophie was ready to face her actions, but I wasn't ready to reveal my hand. She needed to hit rock bottom first. The next few days were pivotal. Sophie decided to sell most of the jewels, keeping only James's engagement ring to me and a locket that belonged to her grandmother. I watched her prepare, researching jewelers in Charleston's historic district, haggling over prices, turning family history into transactions. "I got $180,000 for the jewels," she told me one afternoon, counting bills on the kitchen table. "It's less than I hoped, but it'll cover the urgent debts." "Are you sure about this?" I asked. "I have no choice," she said. "If I don't pay soon, they'll seize everything. They could even come after this house if they link me to any properties." The irony was rich. She feared losing a home I owned, using James's jewels to pay a conman's debts, unaware of the fortune I held. "How will you prioritize the debts?" I asked again. "The bank counselor said to tackle ones tied to collateral first to avoid foreclosure," she replied, her voice weary but resolute. The suffering had made her cautious, fragile yet determined. That night, as she organized loan documents, Mr. Caldwell called again. "Mrs. Hart, big news. We've located Nathan." "Where?" I asked. "Paris, as Sophie suspected. He's trying to get French residency through a sham marriage with that young woman she mentioned." "A fake marriage?" "Yes. She needs papers, he needs to dodge deportation. More importantly, we found proof he deliberately forged Sophie's signature to flee his debts. So she's off the hook." "With this evidence, yes. We can prove fraud and coercion. She won't owe a dime for his mess." It was perfect. I could save Sophie legally without her knowing I had the means to pay outright. "Start the process immediately," I said. "Don't tell Sophie. I want it finalized before she knows. No false hopes." "It'll take 3 weeks, maybe a month," he said. "Perfect." I hung up, catching Sophie's curious glance. "Who was that, Mom?" "Just a neighbor asking about Clara," I lied. "Wrong number. 45:04. Deception had become second nature. I lived two lives. The grieving widow Sophie saw and the wealthy strategist pulling strings in secret. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Sophie grapple with reality she'd never faced, stretching grocery money, negotiating with creditors, job hunting with a tarnished credit history. It was a harsh but necessary lesson. "I had 3 interviews today," she told me one evening, limping in with sore feet and a weary face. 2 said my legal troubles make me unhireable. The 3rd offered a part-time job cleaning offices at night. "Will you take it?" "Yes." "I have to," she said. "It's low pay, but it's something, and I can keep looking for better work during the day." Seeing my daughter, who'd lived comfortably for decades, prepare to scrub floors at night tore at me. Yet pride swelled too. She was facing reality without expecting handouts. "Can you handle the physical work?" "Yes." "I'll learn," she said. "I can't keep leaning on you, Mom. It's bad enough you're letting me stay here for free." "This is your home, Sophie," I said. "No, it's yours," she replied. "I'm here because of your kindness, but I won't take advantage forever." One evening, while Sophie was at her first cleaning shift, Clara stopped by, sipping sweet tea in my kitchen, eyeing the family photos on the walls. "Eleanor, did you know Sophie would come back like this?" she asked. "What do you mean?" I said, stirring my tea. "When she left, she was so high and mighty, talking about her grand European life with Nathan. Now she's back, broken, cleaning offices, living here. Life's funny, ain't it?" "It sure is, Clara," I said. "But she's different now," Clara went on. "Not just sad, humble, like she's learned something real." "What do you think she learned?" "Yes. The value of what she took for granted, like a mama who loves her no matter what." "Maybe," I said, smiling faintly. "When she left you high and dry, we all thought you'd never forgive her," Clara said. "But here you are, giving her a home." "She's my daughter," I said simply. "Not every mama would do that after what she did," Clara replied, her eyes sharp. If only Clara knew I could erase Sophie's troubles with a phone call, but was choosing to let her struggle for her own growth. "Am I doing right by her?" "Yes. You're doing what a good mama does," Clara said. "But Sophie needs to see you not just as her savior, but as the strong woman who built a life for 45 years. She needs to respect you, not just need you." Clara had nailed it. That was my plan's heart. I didn't want Sophie's return born of desperation, but of mature respect. "How does that happen?" "Yes. It's already happening," Clara said. "She talks to you differently now, grateful, not bossy. She's growing up." That night, Sophie came home exhausted but with a quiet dignity. "How was your first shift?" "Yes. Tough but not awful," she said. "The other cleaners helped me. One, Mrs. Carter, showed me tricks to work faster." "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes. Yeah, she's 60, been cleaning offices 20 years. Started after her husband left her with 3 kids. Says it's not her dream job, but it gave her independence." "Sounds wise," I said. "She is," Sophie said, sipping water. She said something that stuck with me. "There are 2 kinds of people in this job. Those who never had a chance and those who squandered the ones they had." She asked which I was. "What did you say?" "The truth, I had everything. A loving family, a stable home, an inheritance. I threw it away chasing a worthless man." "What did she say?" She laughed and said, "At least you know why you're here, honey. That puts you ahead of most." Sophie sat beside me, her voice softer. "Mom, these weeks have been the hardest of my life, but the most important. I've learned what matters. Not money, not fancy apartments, not impressing folks. It's having people who love you when everything crumbles." "Sophie, Let me finish," she said. "You could hate me for what I did. Abandoning you, taking Dad's things, treating you like a burden. Now I'm back, expecting you to save me." "I forgave you, honey," I said. "But I haven't forgiven myself," she said. "Not until I prove I've changed." The next morning Mr. Caldwell called. "Mrs. Hart, the legal process is nearly done. We can clear Sophie of Nathan's debts." It was time. After weeks of watching Sophie struggle and grow, I was ready to reveal the truth, that she'd never been alone, that I'd been guarding her all along. Mr. Caldwell, set up a meeting, I said. It's time Sophie knows everything. He scheduled it for Friday at his downtown Charleston office. I told Sophie I'd found a lawyer to help with her legal troubles, keeping details vague. Mom, I can't afford a lawyer, she said, nervous. I can barely cover groceries, Sophie said, her voice tight with worry. Don't fret about that now, honey, I replied, smoothing my skirt. Let's see what this lawyer has to say. We arrived at Mr. Caldwell's downtown Charleston office on time. Sophie had put on her best dress, now loose on her thinner frame, her hands twisting nervously, braced for more bad news to pile onto her troubles. Mr. Caldwell greeted us with his polished low-country smile. Mrs. Hart, Miss Hart, thanks for coming. Thank you for seeing us, Sophie said, her tone hesitant. I should warn you, my finances are a mess, and I can't afford steep fees. That's what we're here to discuss, Mr. Caldwell said, glancing at me. First, please review these. He handed Sophie a thick folder. She opened it, her eyes scanning the pages, her face shifting from confusion to shock. I don't understand, she said. This says Nathan forged my signature, that there's proof of fraud, that I'm not liable for his debts. That's correct, Mr. Caldwell said. We've been investigating your case for weeks and found evidence you were a victim of identity fraud. But how? Sophie asked, her voice rising. Who paid for this? I don't have that kind of money. Mr. Caldwell looked at me. It was time. Sophie, there's something I need to tell you, I said, taking a deep breath. After weeks of playing the part, I was ready to unveil the truth. Your father left me more than you ever knew. Much more. What do you mean? She asked, her brow furrowing. Show her the other documents, I told Mr. Caldwell. He handed her a second folder, filled with property deeds, bank statements, and investment records, the fortune James had built in secret. Sophie read in silence, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally realization. Mom, this says you own the downtown Charleston apartment building where I lived. Yes. And other properties, bank accounts, investments. Yes. So when I sold the Sullivan's Island beach house, it was yours, and the sale was illegal? I've already reclaimed it, I said. Sophie stared at the papers, grappling with the truth. How long have you known? Since your call from the clinic, I admitted. You knew when I came back from Europe, begging for help? Yes. You knew you could fix everything while I cried every night? Yes. A heavy silence hung between us. Sophie closed the folders, her eyes locking onto mine. Why, Mom? Why let me suffer when you could have helped? This was the moment I'd planned for. Because you needed to learn something no one could teach you otherwise, I said. You needed to understand the value of what you threw away. Family, respect, responsibility. When you abandoned me, you didn't just take money. You took my dignity, my trust, my love. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, not the self-pitying ones of recent weeks, but ones of deep understanding. I left you when you needed me most, she whispered. Yes. I treated you like you didn't matter. Yes. And you saved me anyway. Yes, but not how you expected. I didn't save you with money to repeat your mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself. Mr. Caldwell stepped in softly. Miss Hart, your mother covered all legal costs to clear you of Nathan's debts. She also recovered the fraudulently sold properties. You're free of legal troubles. And the cleaning job? Sophie asked, turning to me. You can quit if you want, I said. But I hope you don't. Why? Because it's teaching you what ease never could. The value of your own effort, the dignity of honest work, the worth of every dollar you earn. Sophie wiped her tears, her gaze different now. Not a desperate daughter's, but a woman's, filled with respect. Do you forgive me, Mom? I forgave you long ago, honey, I said. The question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know, she admitted. I did awful things. We all make mistakes, Sophie. What matters is what we do after. Mr. Caldwell left us alone in his office. We sat in silence, absorbing the weight of the moment. "Mom, I need you to know something," Sophie said finally. "Even if you were the broke widow I thought you were, I'd have learned the same lesson." "What lesson?" "That nothing's more precious than someone who loves you unconditionally. These weeks, knowing I had a home with you kept me going, no matter how badly I'd messed up." "That'll never change, Sophie," I said. "I know," she said. "But I can't take your love for granted anymore. I have to earn it with respect, gratitude, and actions, not just words." We left Mr. Caldwell's office with a new bond. Not just mother and daughter, but two women who'd chosen each other after a brutal test. The weeks that followed were about rebuilding, but not as Sophie expected. Despite knowing I could erase her troubles, she kept her night cleaning job. "Mom, I need to finish what I started," she told me one afternoon, lacing up her work shoes. "I can't slide back into comfort like nothing happened." "Are you sure?" "Yes. It's not punishment," she said. "It's about remembering who I was and who I want to be." I watched her don her uniform, a far cry from the designer clothes she'd worn in her downtown condo with Nathan. But her posture had changed, no longer defeated but grounded with purpose. That afternoon Clara stopped by, sipping sweet tea in my kitchen. "Eleanor, there's talk in West Ashley," she said, eyeing me. "Folks say you ain't as poor as we thought." "What kind of talk?" I asked, pouring more tea. "They saw Sophie leaving a fancy lawyer's office downtown, then paying off debts at First Coastal Bank. Word is you got your beach house back and fixed her legal mess. That takes money, Eleanor." Clara knew me too well to fool for long. "What are you asking, Clara? Is my friend of 40 years hiding something?" I set down my cup, ready to be honest with someone else. "James left me more than anyone knew. A lot more." "How much?" "Enough that Sophie and I never have to worry again." Clara leaned back, processing. "Why play poor all these months?" I told her everything. Sophie's cold call from the clinic, my silent plan, watching her struggle, and the revelation in Mr. Caldwell's office. "Eleanor, that's brilliant and heart-wrenching," Clara said. "Heart-wrenching? You let your daughter suffer when you could have helped right away. But brilliant. You knew she had to learn the hard way or she'd never value what she lost." "Exactly," I said. "Didn't it hurt seeing her cry every night, dragging to work exhausted?" "Every day," I admitted. "But if I'd bailed her out too soon, she'd have learned nothing." "And has she?" "Look at her," I said. "She knows I could bankroll her life, but she's keeping her job, staying here, using her earnings to help a coworker with daycare costs." Clara smiled. "That ain't the Sophie who left for Europe." "No, it's not. She's learned money's a tool, not the goal. Dignity comes from effort and respect." That night, Sophie came home from her shift and found me reading in the living room. "Mom, I've got news," she said, sitting beside me. "Mrs. Carter asked if I was the rich lady's daughter from the North Side." "What did you say?" "I told her yes, that you've got enough money for me to quit working." She asked why I'm still cleaning offices. I said it's because I need to prove I can stand on my own. "What did she say?" She laughed and said, "That's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mama taught you real wealth." "Mrs. Carter's wise," I said. "She is," Sophie agreed. "She made me see it's not about money, but how you use it, how you carry yourself." She leaned closer. "Mom, I've decided something. I'm staying here but not as a kid crawling back home. I want to live here as a woman sharing her life with her mother." "What's the difference?" "I'm paying my share of the bills, helping with the house, treating this as a partnership between two women who respect each other." "You don't have to, Sophie." "Yes, I do," she said. "I used to take your love for granted. Now I want to earn it to value our bond." "And your job?" "I'm keeping it but not cleaning forever. I want to go back to school, study social work at the College of Charleston. These weeks showed me how many women struggle alone. I want to use our resources to help them like I needed help." 1 hour 3 minutes and 35 seconds. It was everything I'd hoped for. Sophie hadn't just learned her lesson, she was turning it into purpose. And Nathan. Mr. Caldwell said he was arrested in Paris for that fake marriage. He'll be deported soon, but I don't care. That chapter's closed. No resentment. None, she said. Nathan's betrayal forced me to hit rock bottom. Without that, I'd never have valued what I have. That night, I went to bed with a peace I hadn't felt in months. My plan had worked. Sophie was stronger, wiser, more compassionate. James would have been so proud. 6 months later, our life had found a new rhythm. Sophie excelled in her social work studies, and I used part of James's fortune to start a foundation for women facing domestic violence and financial abandonment. One morning, Sophie burst into the kitchen, waving an envelope. "Mom, the letter from the College of Charleston came. I'm accepted into the master's program. I start next semester." "Mom, I'm paying for it with my savings from the cleaning job," Sophie said, her voice firm. Her salary at the Charleston city office was modest, but she'd learned to live frugally, cherishing every dollar earned. "Are you sure?" he asked. "We can cover the master's program easily." "I know," she said, "but this is who I am now. I need to do it myself." That afternoon Clara stopped by, as she had every Friday since Sophie's return. She'd become a confidant, watching our transformation with awe. "Eleanor, I've got a confession," she said, pouring herself another glass of sweet tea. "At first, I thought you were harsh with Sophie. And now?" I asked, stirring my tea. "Now I think you're the wisest mama I know. Look at her." It was true. The Sophie studying for her exams in the living room was a far cry from the woman who'd left for Europe. This Sophie radiated a quiet strength, grounded in her own efforts, not material wealth. "Did you know I saw Sophie at the Piggly Wiggly yesterday?" Clara said. "She was buying groceries for a family she's helping through her job. When I asked why she used her own money instead of city funds, she said some things are worth more than budgets allow." I hadn't known, and my heart swelled with pride. That night, Sophie and I ate dinner on the porch of our West Ashley home, a ritual we'd come to cherish. We talked about our days, dreamed about the future, and savored each other's company. "Mom, I got a strange letter today," Sophie said, slicing her salad. "From who?" My stomach tightened. "Nathan." "Yeah, from Nathan. He's in a French prison, sentenced to 2 years for marriage fraud." "What did he say?" "He's sorry, wants my forgiveness." "How do you feel?" "Nothing," she said, her voice calm. "No anger, no sadness, no need for revenge. It's like that life was a lifetime ago, not months." "Will you write back?" "No," she said. "Not out of hate, but because there's nothing left to say. The Sophie who married him is gone." Her maturity struck me. The woman across from me had forged an inner resilience, born from hitting rock bottom and rising on her own. "What's this whole ordeal taught you, Sophie?" I asked. "That real love doesn't tell you what you want to hear," she said. "It teaches you what you need to learn, even when it stings. That's a hard lesson, but it's vital. Nathan fed me lies, made me feel special, convinced me I deserved luxury without effort. You showed me true wealth comes from hard work, respect, and real relationships." After Sophie went to study, I sat alone on the porch, gazing at the Charleston stars, thinking of James. I'd vowed to protect our daughter, and now I felt I'd honored that promise the right way. I hadn't saved her with money when she was desperate. I'd saved her by teaching her to save herself. I hadn't fixed her problems but let her learn to face them. The next day was Sunday, and we planned to visit the Sullivan's Island beach house for the first time since I'd reclaimed it. Sophie had avoided it, saying she needed time to process her guilt. "Ready?" I asked as we climbed into James's truck. "I think so," she said. The drive was quiet but easy, the low-country marshes gliding past. When we arrived, Sophie paused in the truck, staring at the cream-colored house where we'd spent countless summers. "It's just like I remember," she said softly. "Some things stay the same," I replied. "Others change. I'm not the woman who sold this place." We stepped inside. The house was pristine, just as James and I had kept it, a time capsule of our family's joy. Sophie wandered through, touching the furniture, lingering over photos on the walls. "Mom, I need to apologize," she said. "You already have, honey." "No, specifically for this house. Not just for selling it, but for turning our memories into a transaction." "It's forgiven," I said. "This house holds 40 years of summers, birthdays, low-country Christmases. Dad built this porch himself." "You tended that garden," she continued, sitting on the sofa where James read his Sunday paper. "I learned to swim on that beach. And I traded it all for a conman's scheme." "What hurts most?" "Yes. That when I sold it I felt nothing," she said, her voice heavy. "It was just property. Now being here I feel Dad everywhere. His laughter, his coffee, his glasses on the table." "He's here, Sophie," I said. "He always has been. And he's proud of how you've grown." We spent the day cooking, cleaning, and tending to small repairs, a ritual of reconnecting with the house and its values. As the sun dipped low, we sat on the porch James built, watching the Atlantic waves. "Mom, I have an idea," Sophie said. "What?" "Let's turn this house into a shelter for women escaping domestic violence, a safe place to rebuild their lives." It was perfect. James would have loved his beach house helping others heal. "That's beautiful, honey," I said. "We can use the foundation's funds to maintain it, and I'll manage the program through my job." "Are you sure about giving up our family haven?" she asked. "The best havens are shared," I said. "Dad always said a house isn't a home until it opens to those needing love." He'd welcomed friends, family, and neighbors in need, his generosity filling these walls. We drove home that night with a new mission and a renewed bond, not mother and daughter bound by duty, but two women choosing a shared life of love and purpose. Before bed, I spoke to James silently. "We did it, my love. Sophie's learned what truly matters." For the first time since his passing, I felt his reply in the quiet. "I knew you would. You're both stronger than you know." Justice hadn't come as vengeance but as growth, not punishment but transformation. We'd gained something greater than wealth, a bond built on respect, unshakable by any storm. Did you love this story? Where are you reading from? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to connect. If this tale touched your heart, consider supporting me with a super thanks to keep these stories coming. Your kindness means the world. Check out the screen for 2 more inspiring life stories I recommend. My channel's full of them, don't miss out. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next tale. With love and gratitude.